Good evening and welcome to Town Meeting Television's continuing coverage of election 2022. That's November 8th, or maybe you voted already. But if you haven't, you will be interested to hear about the plans for the new high school here in Burlington. And no better to fill us in is Tom Flanagan, the superintendent of schools in the city of Burlington. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
It's great to have you.
Well, me.
Well, you. And we may have Claire soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's good.
Yeah.
And I want to remind folks that our number is 862-3966 if you have any questions for Tom about the school, the new high school, which of course has budgetary implications for all of us who are taxpayers in the city. So let's just start with, we had a high school plan.
We did.
And then bad things were found.
Correct.
Could you just fill us in on what happened and where we are?
Absolutely, yes. So we had a plan to renovate the high school, the existing high school on Institute Road. And that high school was in need of major updates. It has really significant accessibility issues, problems, and it's an inefficient building. The HVAC systems are failing, and it was clear, I think, to the community that we needed a significant upgrade to that building. And so the citizens of Burlington voted passed a $70 million bond question, where the school board asked if the citizens of Burlington would support a new the reconstruction or renovation. We called it re-envisioning of the high school. So through that process, one of the things that you're required to do when you're renovating a school is to look for toxic materials that may exist in that school. And so we went through that process in 2018, 2019, and 2020, or maybe it was 2019, 2020, this was right before I got here, and started testing the air. And we learned in the summer of 2020, in late August, it was actually the first day of school, and students were back for orientation day, so they actually weren't in the building, but ninth graders were there. We got test results back from the air quality in buildings F and E that was really concerning. The level of PCBs, which is a toxic chemical, that was in the air was of great concern. Our consultants who work with us told us that it was the highest levels that they had seen outside of industrial sites. So we were very concerned. We received back the additional results from the rest of the building, and we learned from those results that there were pervasive PCBs throughout the air in the building, throughout all of the buildings, at different levels in all of the buildings, but across all of the buildings, they were above the state action levels, and those action levels required us to, requires an organization to learn about where they're coming from so we better understand where they're coming from. And the levels were so high that after conversations with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Environmental Conservation, we had a series of meetings with them and also our consultants. I asked them if anyone felt like it was safe for us to be in the building, and no one felt like it was safe for us to be in the building. So we made a decision. That was a decision that actually didn't feel like much of a decision to me, because it felt like it was very clear that the toxic chemicals in the building forced us to not return. And you may have seen today, but we just announced today with Mayor Weinberger, Chair Claire Wool, that we will be suing Monsanto and have built a legal team with experience, national and local experience in this, to address the pervasive toxic chemicals that were in our building and that still exist there. So that led us to a decision point. Can we continue to renovate, or do we need to do something different? And we decided, after a lot of work with the Department of Environmental Conservation, the EPA, our consultants who do this work nationally, our architect and design team, our school board, some outreach to the community, hearing people's feedback on where they thought we were and where we should go. And given that we already had a $70 million bond on a building that was failing, and we had toxic pervasive chemicals in a building that were worse than our consultants who do this across the country had seen in outside of industrial sites, it did not. The school board ultimately decided it was not appropriate to continue with that re-envisioning project, and so we moved into the process of identifying a new site to build a new high school. So I can get into that.
Yeah.
You want me to keep rolling?
Well, yeah, but I want to just ask you a couple things, which
Sure.
is, what's it going to take to dismantle a toxic site like this?
It's going to cost $22 million. So the cost of the removal of all the toxic chemicals and all the building materials. So one of the things that happens with PCBs is that the PCBs were in the caulking around the windows. That's where we knew about it first, and it leaches out of the original kind of location of the toxic chemical and goes in every direction, we've learned. So they're in the wall, they've seeped into the actual concrete block walls outside, or brick outside of the windows, up to 2 feet in some places. And it's in the soil, it's in the glue that sticks floor tiles to the concrete foundation. PCBs are in that substance also, so it's actually inside the foundation of the flooring, and it's in light ballasts. It was used in light ballasts, so it's also in the ceiling. So there are PCBs kind of throughout the building, the air, and the soil, and so you have to go through a careful process of removing materials and taking down the building. And there are organizations that do this. There have been a number of schools that have had PCB problems, none that we know of yet in Vermont that are like ours, and also industrial sites where there are experts who know how to remove these toxic chemicals and the materials that they are in safely.
And is it expected, because there are many schools built around the same time that BHS was built, that in other parts of Vermont, if a study is done, this would turn up?
So the state of Vermont is actually studying this right now.
Okay.
We're in some ways, not for BHS, but for some of our other schools, we're fortunate that we were part of a pilot study a number of years ago that looked at PCB levels, airborne PCBs, in some of our school buildings that were built around the same time. Champlain is one of those schools. And the levels were not at the action levels that existed when we first got into this. And those are really low. That was 15 nanograms per cubic meter, which is a low action level, they call it. That level at which you're required to learn more about what's going on. And so we feel, we do know that none of the other schools that were in that pilot are impacted and have PCBs that rise to the level of any concern. And we know that that they will be testing other buildings. The state is going to do a testing. They're going to test all the buildings that are built within a certain range of time when these PCBs were used. They're going to test all of those school buildings across the state, and they already have started. So there are a couple of school buildings that they found in the first round of testing, and they've only tested, I don't remember the exact number, but it's around 10 school buildings, I think, at this point. And there were 2, I believe, that have PCB issues. So yeah, it's likely that they are starting with schools that I believe they're starting with schools that they're most concerned about, but they will be doing testing across the state. And so they've developed a protocol to do the testing at the state level, and they've also put aside $32 million in the state budget for the process of studying the schools and doing the PCB testing across schools in Vermont.
So let's get to the question of the design that
Sure.
we have. Hi there, Claire. How are you? Welcome. Thanks for joining us. So the last that I saw, there were several designs,
Yep.
and you settled on one. So
did.
tell
We
us
did.
how that decision
Sure.
was made.
Yeah, so I can walk you through the process a little bit, and our chair, school board chair, Claire Wool, is here and can help me where I miss anything. But it was a very intentional process of identifying first a site that would be that's best for the high school, and so we did a lot of engagement around what site would be best. We heard a lot of feedback from the community, and we studied about 16 sites across the city very carefully. And what we learned was that the best site was Institute Road, where the current high school is. And that was because, number one, it would be the least complicated and least expensive site for us to build on. Even though we have to remove the old building, the other sites had far higher levels of complexity. It would have been much harder to build on those sites. And we own the land, so it was easier for us to be able to go there. But that was a decision that was made with a lot of feedback from the community. The school board made that decision after careful deliberation with our experts and consultants that are helping us work on this, and hearing from the community. And so that was a very intentional and significant process that we undertook. And then we brought an architect and design team in to help us build the design. And so we had 5 different designs that we chose from, and we felt that design option C, it was the best one. And that design was most energy efficient. So a couple of designs were really cool. They were sort of spread out a little bit more. One of the designs was right up on the road and faced out onto North Ave, and so but would have required us making a new road. So there was some complexity to one of the designs. The other designs were less energy efficient. They were all more expensive. We chose the option that was least expensive and most energy efficient. And so because of the kind of contained site and the way that was designed, also the roof and the ability for solar, there's just a bunch of reasons that this building made the most sense. And so
So let's look at it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can,
All right.
Kevin, you can bring this up if you want.
So here is there's an updated site plan. If you look at the project history, actually, you can see the original site plan, which includes Burlington High School and Burlington Technical Center.
So that's the white.
That's the technical center is the carved out part.
Yeah.
And the new design, after some deliberation and some other decisions that I can speak to in a second here, includes a more contained site and also less square footage for the Burlington Technical Center. So one of the things that we know is that we've all along, every time we've made a decision, thought about a great building and that has the least impact on taxpayers. We want to make sure that this building is responsible in terms of the tax implications for our community, and that it also provides a design that our community can be proud of and that benefits our community in the long run. So we've always thought about that. And one of the great things that happened during this process, as we were really thinking about cost, is the Burlington Technical Center. Half of the students that go to the Burlington Technical Center are Burlington High School or Burlington residents, and the other half are students from 9 surrounding districts that send their students to us for the Technical Center. It's a wonderful program. We have a bunch of great kind of deeper learning experiences. It's really a special program, and we felt like it was appropriate to have for half of it, because half of our students are a part of BTC, to be included in this design. And at the same time, we had an opportunity at the airport. We also have an aviation program at the airport, and 2 aviation programs. And our aviation teacher and our BTC, our Burlington Technical Center director, submitted an application for a grant, and they received a $10 million earmark from Senator Leahy to build at the Aviation Center. So we were able to remove half of the technical center to the airport, and we're still working with the airport and the city and Beta and Vermont Flight Academy and the group that's out there on a really exciting opportunity to build out that aviation center to include our 2 aviation programs, advanced manufacturing, pre-tech, and perhaps auto as well, and to step into the modern world, right, as they're building electric engines and batteries for airplanes. So we're really excited about that opportunity, and it also helped with the design. So you see the overview of the design up on the slide there that was up a second ago. And then you can see the south entrance. So the south entrance, this shows you how the building is laid out on Institute Road. So Institute Road is the road that you see in front of the building, and you see a lot of glass around the side. That's on North Ave, and that gives an opportunity for the people of Burlington to see the importance of a institution of learning for our community, and then the building is right there, and it's also across from the field. So you have really this campus feel with accessibility in terms of the approach to the building on all sides, and a real open and welcoming environment. This north entrance is on the north side of the high school. So if you go down Institute Road and back up around, you can see the north entrance. And so the building has 2 sort of major entrances. There are other entrances, but 2 major ones, one on the north and one on the south. And these 2 face each other so that there's an entranceway that has light and openness, and is responsive to what we heard from our community about the need for light and for open communal spaces. Here's a classroom design. Again, light. Our students, particularly after being in Macy's, but really in any learning environment, you want natural light. You want to make sure that there's also flexibility. One of the design elements that we've built in that we really heard from students and from faculty is the need for flexibility of space, movement, ability to move and learn in sort of different seating areas and in different configurations. So that was one of the classrooms. And then we have a commons or an entryway, and this entryway is a part of, you saw the north entrance and the south entrance. This is in between those, and this connects to the gym, the auditorium, and then the kind of learning spaces out on each side. So it's a really important space. And it's also a space that provides light, provides space for students to collaborate, to eat, to be together. We heard really clearly from students this idea of light, flexible space, and spaces for them to be able to be together in productive ways and in ways where there's supervision, but also in ways where they have some freedom and some flexibility. And so we really believe that this space does that, and it also is an entryway for the community into the high school. This is not only a building for high school students and their teachers. It's a building for our families, our community, and we really want it to be an open space and also a safe space. And so balancing those 2 things, and the commons is an important part of that.
So Claire, was the school board pretty aligned on this design?
Yes, as far as there was no, there were at the beginning people had their choices, but then after more understanding and time spent with the architects, we spent numerous visits to the architect firm to ask questions that our constituents had asked us, and so in the end everyone was very excited about this design.
And so let's talk about the financial implications.
Sure.
I mean, this is clearly very exciting. It's a big threshold for the community to have a modern high school. It's overdue. I think clearly, no matter what, we decided as a community when we voted for the $70 million bond, right? But now the voters are being asked for something that's more than double that. So maybe you could talk about why it's going to cost so much and what the implications are for the folks in our community.
Yeah. The cost is basically associated. First, we'll start with the demolition of the school. It's roughly coming in between $22 and $25 million. And we, as tenants of the building and our property, when we expose the PCBs, it will be our responsibility to remove those contaminants for obvious reasons, but also letting the taxpayers know we have an obligation to clean the contaminated site as our own property. And we're looking for funding for that from the state in supporting us. So the cost of the cleanup, the demolition and cleanup, and preparing the site for a new building, and then the $70 million was for renovation. In that iteration, having been chair for the last 5 years, we saw costs associated that people might not be familiar with, the HVAC system being $18 million for heating, air conditioning, ventilation throughout a property as large as this, a campus. And so those numbers came in. You know, we get an estimate from our own architects, but we also get independent estimates. We learned that from the $70 million bond. If people remember, it came in at 92 originally, and so we had to reduce and financially be fiscally responsible on those plans. And this is the most fiscally responsible budget that we are presenting. And we know there are real world uncertainties, and we're aware of that. And we've asked that of the architects and the independent estimator as well. So there are contingencies, which means there are safeguards in this budget. So when we ask for taxpayers to borrow up to, we are capped at 165. We believe that is a comfortable number. That is nothing that Superintendent Flanagan and I want to come back to and ask taxpayers that we didn't do our job over the last 2 years. So we are on the mark for this budget that we believe represents the square footage costs based on independent architects as well, giving us guidance. Everyone has been very collaborative in this city. I will say, as host city to our state university and numerous architect firms, there is a sense of wanting all of us to succeed. And we, you know, when we ask students what the slogan for our lawn signs should be, they come up with, you know, a bunch of creative ideas. And then one student said, you know, what about we need a high school, just simply stated. And so we understand the costs associated. So it is a need, it is not a want. We do not have an alternative after Macy's. We are very lucky Macy's was available, and we went there the second day we were closed. We are paying Macy's over $1 million a year in rent, and we have a finite lease. So we want the downtown area to be developed for tax-based purposes and revenue. But we are confident in our budget and our bond vote that it reflects the building of a new campus. And we look forward to sharing more and educating people over the next 3 weeks that, first and foremost, you know, my hope in talking to you tonight and your viewers is that going back to old BHS is not an option. So when we went and met with all our NPAs, there was still that sentiment like, can't you go back and fix it? And we cannot. And our announcement today about suing Monsanto, the creator and manufacturer of known chemicals in schools and other buildings throughout the United States, we're going to actively go after that as a liability and the harm that it's caused our community.
So let's look at the numbers so that we can. So I think you're basing it on a $370,000 home. You've got a couple of views. One, if you've got income sensitive, if you get it, you're compensated because of your income, or if you're not. And Kevin, why don't you bring this slide up? This is the yearly implications. Maybe there's tax implications when fully bonded. That is the slide we have up. Or we can look at this one. Let's look at this one because it's up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's what Chair Claire Wool just said is really important for the viewers to understand. Number one, we chose the least expensive site. We chose the least expensive design. The design is in line with high schools and buildings of this square footage, of this size, that have been built in New England recently. And and there really is not another option. We don't have a high school building for 1,000 students beyond 2025, and so it's really critical. And we've fully committed. We have a memorandum of understanding with the City Council and the city to bring all of the funding that we can possibly bring to this project, over the next 2 weeks to 2 years, when the tax implications really start to, when taxpayers would really start to feel those tax implications. So we're committed to that fully. You saw today in the Monsanto announcement that we've made that we're committed on all fronts. We're applying for 17 we're eligible, we believe, for 17 different current grants in the current state budget, and we believe we will be eligible for more funding from the state and federal government in future years as well. So the implications right now are that with a $165 million bond, that the tax rate increase on a $370,000 home is about 15%. Again, we are not planning to borrow the whole $165 million, but our board felt like it was really important that we bond for the full amount of the cost as we know it today.
Okay, but I don't understand what 15% means, so I'd like to see that other slide, Kevin, that talks about tax implications when fully bonded. Not that one, the other one. I mean, this is monthly tax implications. So if you have a $300,000 house and your family makes $110,000, then you're looking at about $500 a year in tax implication. Is that right? That sounds $47 a month?
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
So if I have a $350,000 house and my family makes $90,000 a year, it's comparable. I'm looking about $600 a year.
Times 12, right?
Right. So people are looking at somewhere between $200 a year and $1,000 a year in additional taxes.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And is that number change over time, or is that pretty much stay the same, or does that increase?
Depending on the bond that we did, there was another slide that said in the first year it would be 0. We wouldn't see it in the first year. In 224, you would see a percentage increase, and so it does fluctuate.
Yep.
Yeah. So
There we go.
2.5 and then a 9.50.
So what's that mean, 2.5 and 9.50?
That's what we're estimating. Like the tax rate, the rate of borrowing of what that impact would be on 70 million would be, your taxes would go up 2.85%.
Because it takes us until the year 2026 to be borrowing
The full
on
amount.
The full amount.
I
Right.
understand. Okay.
Right.
So, but I'm basically, for my house, let's just say, I'm looking at $800 a year addition to fund the high school.
Yes.
Over how many years? What's the bond period?
We actually won't decide that
Okay.
until next year,
Okay.
because when we start the borrowing, we will want to look very carefully. We've been working with the city on this to make sure that we're choosing or we're making a decision on the right amount of time.
So it could be
it could be
20
20, it could be
years?
30.
Okay, somewhere between 20
Somewhere
and 30
between
years.
20 and 30, yes.
All right, so the short story is November 8th, there is a bond issue. Is it half the city has to vote or 2/3 of the city?
Majority.
The majority. So it's 51%
Yes.
of the people in the community need to support this for this to go. And we don't have time to talk about what happens if it doesn't go. So I'm just going to thank you both for being with us, for all the hard work that has gone into finding creative solutions for our children during a pandemic, during a PCB problem, and the need for a new high school. So I want to thank you both. I hope you get enough recognition in the outside world for especially you, Claire, because you are a volunteer, and Tom, because you are a great educational leader. So thank you. Thanks for watching. I want to invite people to remember to vote on November 8th if you have not already. And of course, stay tuned right here to Town Meeting TV for continuing coverage of election 2022. And of course, on November 8th at 7:30, the results will be here and you can find out if the school ballot item bond has passed. Thanks for watching.